My name is Agnes Rutherford. I was hired at Avtex in 1948 over the phone. You might say I was recruited by an auctioneer and the employment manager. And I worked in the manager's office the whole time that I was there, first for the personnel manager and then for the plant manager. I had 7 plant managers, one of them twice while I worked there. I was the editor of the Avtex News. I was able to help with the typing of the contract negotiations every time they had those, and would get to go on trips to do that, working at nighttime after they finished the meetings, which was fun. Got to go to New York on conventions for the Avtex News, and got to cook a lot of dinners. The first one that I helped to cook was at Mr. Tompkins' cabin on the Browntown Road when we entertained the members of the War College from Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And then during the years, every time we had visitors and all, I fixed dinner for them at the plant. And the largest crowd that I had was 45, and the smallest probably was about 6. But I could do whatever I wanted, and it pleased them. Sometimes they had special requests for things that they'd had before when they came. And there's no way I could detail all the experiences that I had out there, from fires and floods and power outages and things like that. I was lucky that most of the time the command center was in the office where I was, and everybody reported in to tell the plant manager how things were going on getting the plant back online again. I've gone in emergencies and have taken my children in with me, and my boss entertained my children while I did the work. And they loved it because they could ride tricycles and play ball in the office. It was so big. But Avtex was a great place to work. I enjoyed all of it. Most of it I enjoyed before they transferred the R&D part to Front Royal. I felt like it was more of a family team effort before the corporate offices came to Front Royal. I felt like the plant all worked together. But then after they changed it, I felt like it just kind of disintegrated. The togetherness disintegrated, and people were working more for their own will than they were for the good of the whole team.
The corporate offices came. This is the first that I've heard of that. Could you explain a little bit
They
more?
moved the headquarters from Valley Forge to Front Royal, and the R&D department from Marcus Hook, Pennsylvania to Front Royal. And then they had some of the sales staff that was at Front Royal also.
Was this under American Viscos?
No, this
FMC?
was under Avtex.
Avtex. And what is R&D?
Research and development.
Oh, okay. Do you know approximately the time frame that this occurred?
No, I don't remember when it was.
Okay. It might have been the 70s or the 60s? What
No, it
years?
was later than that.
Was it?
It was after Mr. Gregg bought the plant.
In the 80s?
Probably in the late 70s or early 80s, because I retired in 86.
So when John Gregg took over, that's when the corporate offices and research and development moved
After he
here.
became head of it, yes.
And that's when you noticed things changed a bit.
It was more to each his own. I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't the same.
Could you, approximately how long were you at Avtex? About what year?
1948 to 1986. And the fun part of my job was that I got to do all the parties. I did the service awards, and we had a party every time every year that we had people getting 25 years or 40 years of service with the plant, we had a party, a 25-year party, and they were invited to it. And when FMC took over, when they bought the company, they gave everybody who had been there 25 years a watch. So we had about 8 parties that year, so everybody would get their watches. And then every 5 years, after you got 25 years, you could get another watch or another award. You could pick out whatever you wanted.
And you cooked the food for the 25-year?
No, I didn't have to cook for those. We had those at Wayside or at the, we had one in Luray and we had one over to Middleburg. But most of them were at Wayside or Quality Inn.
Could you talk a little bit about the different plant managers that you worked for, if you remember their names or approximate tenure?
I went to work for Mr. McVeigh. I was the last person that Dr. Bondurant examined. I went on a Saturday for my examination. And then when I went to work, Dr. Cadden had transferred here during that week. And I was examined again by him. But Mr. McVeigh was the plant manager. And then I've forgotten in what order. I believe Rufus Carney was next, and then I had Eldon Campbell and A.G. Ruff, Fitzhugh Wickham, Ray Enix, and somewhere in between I had Mr. Campbell again. But I had no problem getting along with any of them. And Mr. Ruff's secretary from Marks Hook called and asked me if I wanted her to give me some tips on how to handle Mr. Ruff. And I said, sure. She said, well, I said, he likes his coffee black, and he likes this, and he likes that. And then she says, and if he tells you to write a letter, he wants a letter. And if he tells you to write a note, he wants a note. And says, you don't ever change anything. So I said, okay. So we got along fine. But anyway, he gave me a letter one day, and I typed it, and he had written it out, and I was just typing from his writing, and he had effect or effect, I've forgotten which it was, and I didn't think what he had was right, so I changed it, and I typed the letter twice, and I put one so it would show underneath the other, and I took it in for him to sign with his on top. And he said, how come I have 2 copies? I said, well, one's your version and one's mine. And he said, what's the difference? And I said, well, you used effect, and I thought it should be affect. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes, sir. So he tore up his copy, and from then on, we had no problem. But he always gave me credit for being a good letter writer. He would tell me what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it, and let me compose the letter most of the time, unless it was something technical or something like that. But it was fun.
Do you remember any details, such as the pay scale, how it changed over the years? Any other details aside from what happened when John Gray came in, some of the differences then? Could you talk a little bit more in detail about the evolution of the plant, things that you remember?
I don't really remember a lot about the manufacturing process. Mine was all in the office. Everything took place in the office. I was very happy in my job. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot to do with making travel arrangements for applicants coming in and for anybody in the plant that was going on trips, and directing the chauffeur on his chores. Had a great group to work for.
For instance, what was the equipment like when you got there in 1948?
The equipment?
Your
Ditto machine, purple hands, manual typewriters.
Manual typewriters?
Oh yeah. And then we finally got electric typewriters, and then we finally went to word processors and electric typewriters. I had a Xerox typewriter that I loved. I'd give anything to brought it home. It was nice.
So I guess the office work evolved as you went along too. When you changed the word affect for your boss, Did you have to retype the whole thing, or could you push a button and have some memory
You
stuff?
have to retype it.
The whole thing.
Yeah, we used carbon paper for copies. Yeah, it was different. We didn't have Xerox machines then. But in fact, the first contract that I had to do, we did a copy for everybody in the plant. We did on the Ditto machine. And when we went to Washington, when I went down there for negotiations, I had to take the Ditto machine and everything with me, and the typewriters and everything. But they set us up so that we had space and everything. And there was another girl came one time from Philadelphia, worked with me, and we did the typing and the running off on the machine, and the men put the copies together for us. We had things laying on beds, and they'd walk around the bed and pick up the copies. That was manual labor.
Okay, let me see. Can you recall some of the important events, such as you mentioned earlier, the fire in the stack? Could you talk a little bit about some of the stories that occurred while you were there?
Well, most of those I wasn't involved with, really. My thing was, besides doing the regular secretarial duties, was doing the fair booth, decorating the fair booth at the fair, doing the Christmas float, and when they had open house or family nights or something like that, decorating the cafeteria for Christmas, and foreman's club parties and things like that. We had a lot of fun.
I've heard some people mention that you could get tickets for the Wayside Theater for $1 for a while.
That was part of the program we had, that we worked with Wayside and had discounted tickets, and they would get them through the office. We had sewing contests through the Avisco News where people made garments out of rayon, and had a panel of judges, and they picked who did the best. We had drawing contests, things like for the employees.
Were you involved in any of the creating the different social events that happened there, such as the baseball team? What were some of the other social events that went on?
Well, that was mostly under the Foreman's Club, and they had a clubhouse out in the Fork area, I guess you call it, off Rivermont Drive, out that way. And I think probably the first outing that the Foreman's Club had after I went there was a picnic type thing, and it was all men then. They had very few women supervisors, and you had to be supposedly a supervisor, a salaried employee, I guess, before you could join. And they had a lot of outings. We had a lot of dances and things like that. So that worked out good.
I know George and Thelma Toohey met each other at the plant. Was it, well, not an extension of high school, but the social life and the family orientation of the plant, the work atmosphere seems different then than it appears to be today. Could you talk?
It was more of a family type thing, and you spent more time with them, with the people you work with, than you did with your family. And I always felt like I was a part of the families of my supervisors and all, and they included me in things that they did, personal things that they did with their families. And I just felt like I was one of the family again. But it was interesting.
Neat. I wish work could be like that these days.
Me too.
I don't want to turn the camera off yet. I feel like is there anything that sticks out in your mind that you think about now, you know, the good old days, that you'd like to share? Can you?
I don't know of anything. I had nothing but good experiences. I was able to get along with everybody that I worked with, and felt like I gave a good day's work for a good day's pay. And I have always said that I thought I had the best job in Warren County. Maybe not the best paying job, but the best job.
Did you ever do the shift work, or was it 9 to 5?
I worked 7:30 to 4:15 when I first went there, and then after the corporate office came, it was 9 to 5, I believe it was, so we worked. I liked the early shifts better.
Let me turn it off for a minute. And you were the editor of the Avisco News?
Yes. There were 7 plants when I first went there involved in the American Viscose family, and there was kind of a competition between the plants to see who could have a cover and a good feature story, and each plant had their own news, and we were able to get the front cover of the Avisco News quite a few times and also have the feature story, and that's where the contest for the best sewn garment with rayon and the coloring contest and all that came in through the Avisco News. And the employees themselves provided the news where they went on vacation and their pictures of their children and stuff like that. And each department had a reporter, and they would have to send the news in to me, and I would edit it and add whatever I wanted to it, and then it would go to New York, and then it would come back to us in the Avisco News.
Now, how many plants were covered in the Avisco News?
7.
7?
When I first started,
And did it come free to all the employees?
Yes, every employee got a copy of it. At the end of the year, they gave a bound copy of the whole thing to the editor, and my copy is down at the Heritage Society. I left it at the plant, but it ended up at the Heritage Society.
Are there any landmark events that you remember covering for the Avisco News? Is there anything else that you can add at this point?
I don't know that there were things that were covered by the local newspaper rather than by the Avisco News, like when they changed ownership or changed corporate managers and things like that. We would have press conferences and invite all of the local dignitaries to come out while they made the announcement. And of course, when we had the big fire and things like that, they had the local press to cover that kind of stuff. That wasn't the kind of news that was in the Avisco News. The Avisco News was just an employee magazine, more or less.
As the plant changed hands from American Viscose to FMC, Avtex, were there any subtle or major changes that occurred to you that went on at that time?
No, not really. The transition was real smooth. Usually they would come and visit the plant before or after the announcement was made. They would come and visit, and we would get to meet a lot of the corporate people that way.
A lot of people have said in the previous interviews that they felt that the plant would be closing anyway. As time went on, the physical plant became degraded. Could you speak a little bit about the evolution of the plant toward the end?
Well, I really wasn't there at the end. I retired before the plant closed, and I'm really glad I did, that I didn't see it go down. I'm thankful for that.
You left in '86, about a year before it closed, or 3 years?
A little bit more, at least 2 years, I think.
2 years.
I've forgotten when it
If it closed in '89 or
Yeah, I left in '86,
'86.
the end of '86.
At the time when you left, the number of employees had gone down by then?
During the war, they had 4,500 employees, and then I think towards the end, of course, they didn't have all of the departments running as full as they had before.
Do you mind if I turn the music off?
I had both my children while I was working for Avtex. Chuck was born in 1955, and then I became pregnant again in 1968, and my second son was born in 1969. But I was 44 when he was born, and it was quite a surprise when I found out I was pregnant. But I remember going to work. Well, my husband's sister saw me downtown on Saturday, and she said, guess what I heard in the beauty shop today? And I said, I don't know, what'd you hear? She said, heard you were pregnant. I said, yeah, sure. So I came home and I told my husband that I was going to have to tell him at work that I was pregnant because somebody had told, and the only people that knew would have been the doctor's office. And so anyway, I went to work on Monday morning, and I decided that I would type up a little note. So I typed up a little poem. I should have brought a copy of it for you, but anyway, I typed up a little poem and told everybody that I thought Charles was over the hill and he thought I was on the pill and I was pregnant. And everybody was really surprised, but I took the note around, and there were 10 or 12 offices within my office. And I took the note around, laid it on everybody's table, and then I went and turned my back. I was opening the mail at the mail table and stood there with tears in my eyes because I didn't really want to be pregnant. And but anyway, they were really nice to me. Everybody was very considerate, but I never did really take maternity leave. I worked almost up until the time the baby was born, and I went back within 2 months after he was born. That was the last one. The first one I took maternity leave, but the second one I didn't. And it worked out fine. But I remember that one of my bosses was the first person to come and see me after the baby was born. And that next morning on his way to work, he stopped in to see me. Had heard that I had a baby. Had a big baby, 10 pounds and 4 ounces.
You had 2 boys?
Uh-huh. Chuck and Alan.
That's neat. Between the 2 babies, was the health benefit, the health coverage package, was it comparable?
It was the same for both of them. I had full coverage for both of them. But when I gave them the poem, we had a teletype machine then. We had a switchboard operator. And I gave everybody a copy of the poem, and the girl put it on a teletype machine, and the girl on the switchboard told everybody she was talking to. Mr. Spangler was in Lewistown then, and he said they brought a copy and laid it on his desk while he was having the morning meeting. So it spread like wildfire real quick.
Somebody was talking about the PA system, that there were some pranksters making train sounds go over the PA system. Can you remember some of the things on site, such as the PA system that we
The
might
bicycles. Did anybody tell you how many bicycles I had?
No.
Hundreds of bicycles. And that was my older son's biggest dream, to ride a bicycle out there because the hallways were so long. And everybody had a bicycle, and they were always stealing the bells off the bicycles away from other people, you know, and changing equipment around a little bit. But they locked their bicycles when they left them because somebody else come along and get it and ride it back. They didn't take them. They just would ride it back to where they were going and leave it there.
How far were the hallways? Quarter of a mile or something? There were miles of hallways altogether, weren't there?
Oh yes, I don't know how many miles there would have been. There were 55 acres under roof, and there were hallways all the way around there. I worked there for a year, I know, before I got gutsy enough to walk down all the way to the end of the hall on one side.
How long did it take to get from one end to the other?
Oh, probably 5 minutes to get from my office, which was in the middle, down to the engineering hallway. You'd have to ask somebody, one of the engineers, how far it was, but it made a complete square around the staple department and the spinning department. And then there were hallways on each end of that still.
And you said your office was big enough for the kids to ride bikes and play ball. How
Yeah.
big was your office?
Our office was bigger than my house, twice as big as my house probably. It had a center open area, and that's where the secretaries were. When I first went there, there were, I think, either 9 or 11 secretaries in the office when I first went there. And when the corporate office came down, well, there was that many girls, including the teletype operator and the switchboard operator. And then when there were 2 of us, and then there was only 1 of us. But the men themselves had changed. There weren't as many men in the office. They had the production control unit was in there, and they had the manufacturing superintendent and the plant engineer and the assistant plant manager and the personnel manager and the labor relations manager. All of them were in there.
As the number of employees dwindled, were they fired, or did they just
Well, some
become
of
reduced by
them, like they
attrition?
moved the engineering office down to the back end of the plant. So the engineering secretary went down with them, and the switchboard operator was transferred up to the main gate, and then the teletype operator, we got the fax machines, you know, so you don't need teletype operators in. But as the equipment changed, the demand, the personnel changed too.
Did they send you away to training classes or come and train you at work?
Most of them it was training at work. You just got the machine and learned how to use it. We all became mechanics and taking the Xerox machines apart and putting the drums in and putting the ink in and stuff like that.
How did you feel the day that you heard that the plant had been closed?
Sad, very sad. I was sorry for the people that were still there because it affected their pensions, and it was right at near Christmas time, so they needed their income for Christmas, and a lot of them took their money from the retirement plan and were not able to roll it over because they needed it to live on, so they lost some of their pension by doing that.
Do you remember any changes in the community when the plant closed? Did the community rally to help those who were laid off, or could you talk about anything that you remember occurring after the plant closed here in the community?
No, I don't think the people that worked there were the ones that were affected by it, and the people that didn't work there and didn't like the odor, I have to say we're glad that it closed, even though it financially hurt the town in a way, for a while at least. So it was mixed feelings.
What would you like to see happen on the site now in the future? How would you like to see it be remediated?
I don't know. I'd just like to see the mess gone. I wish they'd left the stack up. I don't know why they had to take it down so quick, but it would have been a landmark. I think that would have been the thing to leave for Avtex rather than taking that down.
Before I turn it off, do you want to add anything at all at this point?
I don't know of a thing. I had a good time, even though I sound boring about it. I did enjoy working there, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do it. This is the Avtex water tower, and it's one of our sill sitters. I have a whole shelf full of them over there that we've done. It has a history of the stack on the back, and I can't read it because I don't have my glasses on. But anyway, we did these to sell for the Republican Women's Club.
Who designed it?
Huh?
Who designed it?
Oh, it's from a picture. It's silk screen. I had it made in Hagerstown, my hometown.
I'll give you a rebate on your life. So, Oh, my ex-girlfriend, Tiffany.